I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio. Welcome back to Seamwork Radio, where we share practical ideas for building a creative process so you can sew with intention and joy. So have you ever noticed that the days you feel best in your clothes are usually the days you didn't have to think too hard about getting dressed? I think there's something to that. So today we're talking about the idea of a summer outfit uniform. Not wearing literally the same thing every day, but finding a repeatable formula that works for your body, your life, and your climate. We'll get into why outfit formulas actually free up your creativity instead of limiting it, how to find the formula that's already hiding in your closet, and how to use your summer sewing to build it out intentionally. Whether you're planning your summer wardrobe right now or you're just tired of standing in front of your closet feeling stuck, this one's for you. All right, Haley, here's our icebreaker question for today. Tell me about a time you looked at your closet and realized you'd been sewing basically the same thing over and over without meaning to. Like suddenly you noticed that you had a type.
Yeah, I think back on a time, maybe a little over a decade ago, where I went through this phase where I was sewing like everything in two silhouettes. I was either sewing a shift dress or like a very like fitted bodice, gathered skirt silhouette. And for me, it was like fine. I liked those things. It was fine until it wasn't fine, right? Mm. I found that after a time, I just felt completely burnt out on those styles. It wasn't that I didn't ever want to wear them again, but I just felt so bored. Yeah. I feel like this was an example of a time that I leaned into a uniform unintentionally in too hard of a way. So it taught me like a little bit about the balance of that, right? Yeah. It was so nice to have those tried and trues. Mm-hmm. And I needed to find ways to switch it up.
Yeah. Mine, I would say, is very similar in that when I first started sewing, and for many years after, I was really into vintage patterns, and I would sew a lot from vintage patterns. And I would make a lot of like kind of poofy 1950s style dresses, not 1950s style, like 1950s dresses. And it was because I just liked the style. Like I thought the patterns were so cute. The design lines were so cute. It looked so great on the envelope. There's something like, I don't know, nostalgic and beautiful about them. But over time, I realized it wasn't really my style. Yeah. And also didn't really work that well for my body. Like I really didn't like a tight waist, for example. And I just feel like it was an instance of not really thinking about it beyond I like this, you know? And I think since then I've learned that I like a lot of different things, and finding the things that I actually like and feel good in is important to me. So
yeah, that's so powerful of like when you realize that it has to fit that intersection, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that there's so many options, and just because you like something doesn't mean you have to have it.
Yeah, I think that a lot of like us creative folk and people who, I think specifically if you really enjoy like fashion history and like, you know, vintage and all of that, it can be really easy to fall into that trap of like, I like it, I make it. Yeah. I wear it. But that's, you know, that's not necessarily how it works.
Yeah. Sometimes it does. I mean, sometimes there are times where, you know, just being inspired by something is wonderful and you make something you love. But most of my sewing, I want to be wearable and practical. So it doesn't have to be all of it, but most of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, give us your icebreaker for a future episode. So if you have a question for us, you can leave it either in a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or you can leave it in a comment on Spotify, and we'll see it and we'll answer it in a future episode. So we love hearing from you guys, and we love seeing those reviews too. So thank you to everybody who's left one already. All right, well, let's get down to our issue, which is, you know, I think the real issue is decision fatigue, and how that's really one of the biggest creativity killers in sewing. You know, like you've done all this work learning techniques and collecting patterns and curating a fabric stash, and then you sit down to plan a project and you feel completely paralyzed by the number of choices that you have. Like I was saying before, there's so many choices, so many things that you could make. You know, so you have all these questions like, what pattern should I use? What fabric? What color? Will this go with anything I already own? What if I spend 12 hours on this and then I never wear it? And by the time you've decided all of that, half your creative energy is just gone before you even cut into the fabric. And I really used to sew things just because I liked the idea of them or thought they'd be fun or interesting, like we were just talking about. But that approach really led to a closet full of these one-offs that didn't really work together. And I especially noticed that I'd sew a lot of really fancy, like party clothes that I rarely had a chance to wear. I still feel like, I just went through cleaning out my closet a little bit and I separated out like the everyday clothes from the fancier clothes. And I still have a lot of fancy clothes that I very rarely get an opportunity to wear. So I still have that inclination. But really, a big shift came when I noticed that there were outfits that I actually wore quite often over and over. And instead of seeing that as boring, I really leaned into it. And that's when sewing really began to feel less like just a bunch of disconnected projects and more like building something bigger and more cohesive. And I think the reason that we wanted to talk about this in terms of summer is that summer wardrobes, they just tend to be smaller and simpler. We have lighter fabrics, we have fewer layers, we have just less to work with overall. And I think hot weather already narrows your options so much because you're not wearing layers, you're not reaching for some boiled wool jacket in the middle of July. And that makes summer the ideal season to really experiment with a formula because the natural constraints are already doing some of that work for you and making things a lot simpler. And it's also the season where getting dressed should just feel the easiest. But if your me-mades don't work together, it can feel surprisingly hard. So I'm curious, do you feel like you already have a summer uniform, Haley?
Yeah, I definitely have one. Right now, I think I have two kind of tried and true uniforms. One is some kind of like pull-on midi dress, usually something that's like very floaty and like a lawn. I like a longer length because then I can like bend over and nothing's flying out. And then my second one is that I tend to also really love like a button up with shorts. I like both of these a lot. And I feel like I've landed back in that conundrum that I talked about in the icebreaker where I have two.
Yeah.
I don't think two is a magical number for me. I think I need like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
I think that's my sweet spot of having enough like repetition without too much, right?
Yeah.
So this summer I'm working on auditioning a couple other ideas. I really want to try on like a fitted top with a midi skirt combo and then some mini smock dresses. Not good for days I have my kids with me. Too much bending over, but I don't always have them with me. So I'm doing that one for me.
Yeah. They sound comfy and cute.
Yeah. Lots of good like fabric choices. I like to have fun with fabric in the summer because I don't get to layer as much.
Yeah.
So I want the fabric to speak to me.
That's a really good point. Yeah. I think that's important to me too. Color is not, for me, I'm not like, I don't wear a huge variety of color. I like color in my wardrobe, but I wear like pretty consistent colors. But I do like to kind of mix it up a little bit more in the summer.
Yeah. It feels like where you have so many more constraints, it's nice to allow yourself a little bit more freedom in that area.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have your summer uniform nailed down?
I think so. Yeah. So I like to wear shorts in the summer like you. So it's very basic, but shorts and a t-shirt are a big one for me when I'm just going around the house or gardening or whatever, things like that. Another one that I like to wear a lot is a slip dress with a button up layered over it. Just to cover up my skin from the sun. And it's nice and breezy, especially if it's a linen button up. And what I like about it also is that it protects the back of my neck and my shoulders from the sun, which when you're doing a lot of gardening and spending a lot of time outside, it's really important. A button up is my favorite thing for gardening just because it protects so much. So those are two of them. I like a romper in the summer, like a short romper. The romper I made last summer, I think it was last summer, maybe it was the summer before, the carry romper. That one didn't work out so well because I made it too short. I shortened it and I made it too short.
And there's like so much
There's
ease
so
in
much
it.
ease, yeah. So it didn't really, that was not a smart move.
It was real peekaboo.
Yeah. But I do have rompers in my closet that I wear a lot in the summer. I have a little vintage rayon one that I wear a whole lot. And what I like about them is nice and short and breezy, but you can bend over and do things in them because they're shorts. So those are some of my favorites. I love like a shift dress, like kind of a trapeze, more of a trapeze style shift dress that just is really breezy and keeps you cool. So that's something I might be sewing this summer.
Ooh, I can't wait to see that. A linen trapeze dress is just like summertime perfection.
Oh, I have this linen that I bought. I bought it sometime this year. I'm not sure when, but it's got these gigantic roses. It's white and it has these gigantic roses all over it. So I think that'd be perfect for a shift dress.
So cute.
Yeah.
Do you find that having a formula makes sewing feel less creative or more creative? I think that some people hear uniform and immediately worry that it means boring.
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the person. I think I'm at a place in my life where, to me, it's really fun to play around with having constraints like that, like having a little formula and then experimenting with the individual pieces a little bit, making different variations on that, knowing that I'm going to love it and wear it. To me, that's exciting, and I like that creative constraint. I think maybe if you're like 17 years old and getting into sewing, maybe you just want to play around and make things, or even if you're older than that and you just want to play around and make things. And it just depends on your goals and where you are.
Right. I feel like if you find that that you feel paralyzed by decision, then constraints are your best friend.
Yeah.
If having a million options is a barrier for creating things and for specifically creating things that you are going to use, then you need to meet my best friend constraints. And I think that outfit formulas are a really fun constraint to work within.
Yeah.
Because within those formulas, you can play with so many things: color and print and texture. You can tweak silhouette and finishes. It allows you to zoom in a little bit more instead of having to think macro and micro at the same time.
That
can be challenging.
Yeah. And I think it also depends on how many decisions you have in the rest of your life. If you're making decisions everywhere else, maybe you just want to keep things simple or, implement some rules for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, well, let's get into some tips that are going to help you with this if this is something you're interested in. So the first tip, and I think this is really important, before you design a uniform from scratch, spend a week or two just noticing what you actually wear. So which outfits make you feel good? Which do you grab on days when you don't want to think? What do you put on when you just need to feel like yourself? That way you're not starting from zero, because your closet, that already has clues about what your formula is. One thing that I did that I found really helpful, I started taking photos of all my outfits last year, and I learned so much from that. Basically, I was wearing the same few types of outfits on repeat in different fabrics and colors. And I noticed other things. I also noticed that I wore pants way more than I used to, which was really interesting, especially in the colder months, because I really like dresses and skirts and, I feel great in them. But when it's cold, like I want to be warm. I want to layer up. I want to cover up my legs. So I noticed I was wearing pants, 90% of the time in colder weather. So here's a practical step you can do. Try this for yourself. Just set a phone reminder each morning. You can snap a quick mirror photo. And then at the end of 2 weeks, you can scroll through and just look for the repeating elements. And that can be a really, really helpful exercise.
Yeah, I've done that from time to time. And especially when I'm feeling a little disconnected from the reality of what I like to wear. And it is so illuminating.
Yeah, it is. It's also good if you're doing a closet clean out. Like if you just feel like you have too much stuff, it really helps to see what you're actually wearing and what you're actually getting use out of.
Yeah, totally. All right, our next tip is to break your go-to outfits down into simple formulas. So you'll want to take a look at your favorite outfits and describe them in kind of their most basic structural terms. So like silhouette plus silhouette. So some of the common formula structures could be something like a tucked-in top and a high-waisted wide leg pant, loose flowy dress. I like this one because it's one and done. I'm a big fan. A fitted tank and a midi skirt, boxy top, straight leg pant, a button-up shirt worn open over a simple tank and relaxed pant. The formula is about the silhouette and the proportion, not the specific garments or pattern. And for me, the formulas are often developed over time. It comes down to recognizing the patterns of what we wear time and time again, which this exercise that we just talked about of taking photos can really help you to identify those patterns. And then from there, you can really riff on what has historically worked for you to discover new formulas or variations on formulas that you already really love.
Yeah. All right, the next tip is to identify your anchor piece. So the one that really does the heavy lifting for you. I think every good formula has one piece that's the foundation, the thing that you'd build the rest of the outfit around. And for some people, it's a bottom, like the perfect wide leg pants or a midi skirt that goes with everything. For others, it's a top or maybe a go-to dress silhouette. So your anchor piece is the piece really worth investing in getting exactly right. So the fit, the fabric, the details, it's really the constant in your equation. So, for example, if your formula is a simple tank plus linen pants, and you always feel most like yourself in a relaxed wide leg pant, then that's your anchor. And you might sew 3 pairs in different colors and then vary your tops around those. The anchor is also the piece that's worth sewing multiples of first. So we'll come back to that when we talk about sewing multiples, but it helps to know what that piece is for you. I think for me, in like the cooler months that are not summer, is definitely like a good pair of kind of 70s style jeans. Those are my favorites to wear. I have multiples that I've made. I have multiples in my closet, and it's a really in different colors too. It's not all denim, and it's kind of one of the anchors. And when I took all those photos over the course of the season, I noticed I was wearing those quite a lot. So I've identified that as one of the anchors in my closet. And you might have different ones, but I think that's a good example.
I think that also when we recognize the importance that a particular garment has in our wardrobe, that it can be easier to invest more time into those projects. Like you're talking about making a pair of jeans, which is like obviously a bit more of like a time investment. But once you notice that pattern, it was probably a lot easier for you to like slow down and take the time to make those.
Yeah. It's better if I spend a month making something that I'm going to wear once a week than, spending a week making something that I will wear one time.
Yeah, absolutely. The next tip is to build in your variation through fabric and color and all of those really amazing small details that I'm personally a huge fan of. So a uniform is not about wearing an identical outfit every day. We're not talking about like Flintstones dressing here. It's about keeping the structure consistent while playing with everything else. So like, let's take a button up and shorts, for example, which is one of my favorite summer uniforms. Some of the ways that I can build some variation into that would be with fabric. For instance, like a crisp cotton button up for a work day is great. Or maybe like a drapey rayon version, like tucked into a really cute pair of shorts for a date night. Or like a linen version for like peak summertime heat. Color and print is another way that you can play a lot. You can have the same exact silhouette in a neutral versus a bold color versus a print versus any combination of all of the above. And it can feel like a completely different outfit, right? And then I think another one that is often overlooked is zooming in on some of those smaller details, like playing with a different collar style from top to top, or exploring sleeve length variations, or how can you make even like the more mundane details like pockets or closures a little bit more interesting and stand out, or take the time to learn a new skill through those techniques as well. I think this is where sewing gives you a huge advantage over buying ready to wear, because you have control over every single one of these variables. So kind of think about it as like your formula is like a recipe that you love. You know, those recipes that you make like every single week.
Yeah.
All of the base ingredients probably stay the same, but you adjust like the seasoning or the toppings every time you make it. And sometimes you're feeling like a little fancier or a little spicier. And some nights you just want to keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing with our formulas here.
Yeah, I do that with oatmeal. I have oatmeal every single morning for breakfast. Almost every single morning I eat oatmeal, but I have different toppings.
Yeah.
Ken thinks it's really funny, especially that I vary it every single day.
That's impressive.
It's fun. Well, the next tip is to use summer's natural constraints as a creative gift, because summer really, it does kind of limit your options. You know, you have fewer layers, lighter fabrics, a narrower range of really comfortable fits, and that's actually helpful, because constraints just make decisions easier and faster, like we've been talking about. And when you can't layer heavily or wear really structured fabrics, the field just kind of narrows naturally and you can focus. So think about your specific summer parameters, your climate, your daily activities, your comfort needs in the heat, whether you're in air conditioning most of the day or outdoors. And these aren't limitations on your creativity, they're really just your design parameters. The professional designers work within constraints all the time, and constraints are what keep the work focused and intentional. So if you just think about it this way, think of this as a design project, and these are your parameters for the design project, it actually frees you up creatively.
As a designer, I am constantly working within parameters. I don't just like sit down behind my computer and decide like I want to design XYZ. A lot of the times it's around certain silhouettes that we want to explore. We want to make sure we have one pattern that has sleeves. We want to make sure that we have one thing that's layerable, and all of these things make for I think it makes for a more fun creative puzzle. I love parameters.
Yeah.
I love me some constraints.
It does make it more fun. I agree.
And then I just love the like paper dolling of it all, and seeing how it all plays together and how it can be improved based on viewing it through that lens. I think that when you see it as less of like an obstacle and more as a fun puzzle, then it can like really unlock some new possibilities for you.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, our next tip is to map the gaps in your current summer wardrobe. So once you know your formula and you take stock of what you have and then what's missing, maybe you'll have plenty of tops that work really well, but you'll have zero bottoms that are like in the right fabric weight or in the right silhouette. Or maybe you've like nailed down the weekday version of your formula, but you have nothing for like running errands on the weekend or even evenings out. I know that this is one that I've definitely been guilty of. Or maybe you have pieces that are like all in the same color and you need one version in a print to keep it a little bit more interesting. This is where your sewing plan really starts to come together. So instead of choosing your next project based on whatever pattern just caught your eye, you can start to fill in specific intentional kind of gaps that you have in your wardrobe. So write your formula down and then list what you already own that fits into it, and then list what's missing. Your next sewing project should come from that second list. And this connects really naturally to how the design your wardrobe approach works. You're not sewing randomly, you're building towards a specific vision. And those formulas are a really key part in that vision.
They're super, super helpful. And for our next tip, we're going to go back to this, which we touched on a little bit earlier, which is give yourself full permission to sew multiples. I think there's this kind of quiet pressure in the sewing community to always be making something brand new, the new pattern, a new technique, completely new style. And that can make it feel almost wasteful to sew the same thing twice. But making another version of something you already love is one of the most satisfying and efficient things you can do. And I've been doing more and more of this lately, honestly. I think multiples save you time because you already know the pattern and your fit adjustments, and they build out your wardrobe faster. And each version actually really deepens your skills in this really focused way. So, for example, I've made the long sleeve Alice tee, which is just a basic crew neck fitted tee. I've made it, I think, 4 times now. And each time I made some small change to make it even better. The last version I made was in this lightweight merino rib knit in light pink. And I think it's my favorite yet. It's like this super, super lightweight, almost sheer merino. And it's a great base layer.
Ooh, that
and the
sounds
color,
pretty.
yeah, the color is so pretty. And I plan to make even more. Even though I've already made 4 of them, I'm going to be making even more. Each version is a chance for me to refine my fabric choice, make a cleaner construction, more intentional details, better fit sometimes. With the Alice tee, I noticed the first one I made, the sleeves were a little bit short on me. I have kind of long arms. So that's just, it's a way to learn by repetition, which I think is really important.
Yeah, repetition is like one of the most underestimated ways to build your skills in a really fast way too.
Yeah.
And our last tip for today is to test your formula with a low stakes trial run before you go all in. So before you plan an entire summer capsule around your formula, test it in a real life way. So one complete outfit in your formula, one top, one bottom, or one dress using a fabric that you like, but you're not like super precious about. Something from your stash that's like, that's good, but like not your treasured yardage. Wear it for, as many number of days feels reasonable, and pay attention. Does it feel like it works for your actual daily life? Maybe try wearing it in a few different contexts that you're anticipating that you'd like to be able to wear it for. Is it comfortable in the heat? Do you feel like yourself in it? Does it make getting dressed feel easier? If something is off, like maybe the proportions don't feel right, or the fabric is like not quite right for your climate, or the silhouette doesn't suit you, or like move through your day, you can adjust before you invest more time and more fabric into it. I find that like a small test saves you from really big disappointments. And bonus points if you can do some trial runs of the formula without even having to make anything. Maybe you can do with a version that's in your closet already. Doing a small test with something that you have or something that you're making is going to save you, I think, could save you some big disappointment. And I think that's why like the principle of making it easy and sometimes like choosing the path of least resistance can be a powerful way to save you frustration up front. And I don't like choosing the path of least resistance just for the purpose of the easy way out. But when it's an intentional choice made to save you frustration and like sunk time, then I think that, it's nothing to look down your nose at.
Yeah, it's kind of like the measure twice, cut once principle.
Right.
If you can do a few things at the front end that will make it easier for you to not make, I don't want to say, well, sometimes make mistakes, but sometimes just, make the right decisions for yourself.
Yeah.
Because you've thought about it. Then it just makes your whole life a lot easier and almost guarantees a good outcome. All right, well, let's talk about what we covered today. So here's a quick summary. Your summer uniform is a repeatable outfit formula, a consistent silhouette combination that you vary through fabric, color, and details. So that's the definition of it. So you start by observing what you already reached for, and then you break those outfits down into a simple structural formula. Next, you figure out your anchor piece. So that's the one that does the heavy lifting, and you build around that. Use summer's natural constraints as helpful creative parameters instead of fighting them. Map your wardrobe gaps so your sewing plan is intentional and not scattered. Give yourself permission to sew multiples because it's not boring. It's actually really smart. And then test your formula before committing to a whole capsule. All right, what's your takeaway from today's episode, Haley?
I think that my takeaway is that this approach, I think it makes sewing feel less overwhelming and a little bit more connected. I think that it's really easy to fall into the pattern of thinking of each project individually. You get swept up in like a beautiful fabric that you find or like a really cool pattern that just got released. But when you can think of it as the big picture, and by thinking of it in the big picture, you're connecting it to yourself, to your own personal life. You're going to end up with things that you use. And I think that inherently is really motivating and keeps that momentum going.
Yeah.
Because the more you use the things that you make, the more you connect with your craft on a real and day-to-day way. And the more it's going to keep you coming back.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think for me, the thing that came up for me in this discussion, so I feel like I've been moving more and more towards this idea of outfit formulas or just kind of having certain things that I rely on, certain combinations that I rely on and vary and being a lot more aware of what those are. I think that's something that has been really helpful to me over the last few years. But one thing that came up for me as we were talking about this is, at least where we live, and this is probably true for a lot of you too, summer is like completely different from the rest of the year here. So it's almost like you're living on a different continent all of a sudden.
Yeah.
It's like you've gone from a northern rainforest where everything is wet and muddy all the time to hot, like really hot and really sunny every day. And it's just completely different. So this has really led me to think about what is my summer uniform and how it differs from the rest of my wardrobe and how it's the same and how I can create pieces that translate between the seasons so I don't have things that only get worn 2 or 3 months out of the year. So this has really led me to think about that and maybe crafting some of these outfit formulas that have pieces that will work throughout other seasons when I have different outfit formulas.
Yeah, totally.
If that makes sense. Which is like another constraint, another challenge I can give myself.
Yeah, totally. I think separates are really powerful for that, which a lot of your formulas included.
Yeah, it's true. So one of the most important parts of finding your outfit formula is really understanding which silhouettes actually work for you. So not just what looks appealing on a pattern cover or on a mood board, but what shapes make you feel great when you put them on and walk out the door. And if you're unsure where to start with that, we have a free resource that can help. The Silhouette Workbook walks you through discovering the shapes and the styles that make you feel your best so you can sew clothing that really fits you the way you want it to. And it's a really great foundation for building a personal uniform because once you know your best silhouettes, choosing your formula becomes so much clearer. Because you're not guessing, you're working from something that's real. And it's completely free. You can find it at seamwork.com and we'll drop a link in the show notes if you want to pick up a copy of this. All right, well, that's it for us this week. If you like this episode, please leave us a review. We would love to hear from you. We've gotten so many great reviews. And also, like, I just see people giving 5 stars. You don't have to even write a review. You can just give us a 5-star on Apple, and that really helps other people to find us. It just kind of boosts us a little bit so that other people can find us when they open up the app and look for sewing podcasts. So we really, really appreciate everybody who's taken the time to do that. And If you have a second, we would love it if you would do that for us as well. You can also find us on YouTube at Seamwork Video. You can follow us on Instagram at Seamwork. And if you'd like to become part of the Seamwork community, head over to seamwork.com to learn how to join. One other thing I want to say about YouTube, I've mentioned kind of a summer uniform a lot in this episode, and I'm going to be creating that and sharing that all on YouTube. So if you want to see what I actually end up sewing, head over to YouTube to see that. All right, that's it for us this week. I'm Sarai.
And I'm Haley.
And this is Seamwork Radio.